What I am about to tell you has been known in Japan for over 2,000 years, and there are billion-dollar industries that would prefer you never heard it. Right now, millions of Americans are paying over $1,000 a month for injectable drugs called Ozempic, Wegovy, and now Mounjaro. You have seen the commercials. You have heard the celebrities talk about them. The pharmaceutical industry is making more money from these drugs than from almost anything else on the market. And somewhere in the refrigerated section of your grocery store, sitting in a small plastic pouch, is a plant root called konjac that does many of the same things for about $3. This is its story. Let's start with why Ozempic became such a phenomenon, because understanding that is what makes konjac so remarkable. Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro belong to a class of drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It is an incretin hormone your body naturally produces in your gut after you eat. Here is what GLP-1 does naturally. It tells your pancreas to release insulin. It slows down how fast your stomach empties. So food moves through your system more gradually. It travels to your brain and signals, you are full, stop eating. And it stabilizes blood sugar by preventing the sharp spikes that damage your cells over time. Ozempic and its competitors are synthetic versions of that hormone. They mimic GLP-1, and they work genuinely for blood sugar control and weight loss. That is real. But here is what the commercials do not tell you. At $1,000 a month, most people cannot afford them long-term. The side effects, nausea, vomiting, muscle loss, can be significant. And the moment you stop taking them, the weight comes back because you never address the underlying problem. You just borrowed a hormone. And there is something else the commercials do not mention. A growing number of people on these drugs report what researchers are now calling Ozempic face and Ozempic body. Rapid fat loss, yes, but also significant muscle loss. Sagging skin, accelerated aging in appearance. Because GLP-1 drugs do not distinguish between fat and muscle, they reduce appetite so aggressively that many people simply do not eat enough protein, and their bodies begin breaking down lean tissue. Yeah, you lose the weight, but you also lose the muscle that keeps you strong, mobile, and metabolically healthy as you age. For people over 50, that trade-off deserves serious consideration. Konjac does not do this. It slows digestion, it promotes satiety, but it does not suppress your appetite so severely that your body starts consuming itself. It works with your biology, not around it. Now here is where konjac enters the picture. Konjac is a root vegetable, native to Southeast Asia and East Asia. It has been cultivated in Japan since at least the 6th century, and what makes it medically extraordinary is what it contains: a viscous fiber called glucomannan. Glucomannan does not mimic GLP-1, but it triggers many of the same responses through a completely different and completely natural pathway. When glucomannan reaches your stomach and small intestine, it absorbs water and expands into a thick, slow-moving gel, and that gel sets off a chain reaction. First, it dramatically slows gastric emptying. The same mechanism Ozempic activates artificially, konjac activates naturally. Food leaves your stomach slowly. Carbohydrates break down gradually. Sugar enters your bloodstream at a steady trickle instead of a flood. Blood sugar spike, reduced. Second, that gel coats the lining of your small intestine. It creates a physical barrier that slows glucose absorption. Less sugar gets through, less quickly. Your blood sugar stays lower, longer. Third, it triggers stretch receptors in your stomach wall. Those receptors send a signal to your brain, the same signal GLP-1 sends: I am full, stop eating. The appetite suppression people pay over $1,000 a month for, konjac initiates through pure mechanical biology. Fourth, it feeds the bacteria in your gut that produce short-chain fatty acids. This makes glucomannan a highly effective prebiotic. These molecules improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. Your cells start responding to insulin again, the way they were always supposed to. A review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2023 analyzed multiple randomized controlled trials. Glucomannan supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood sugar, fasting insulin, HbA1c levels, and insulin resistance in people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. The effect was consistent, the mechanism is understood, and it costs almost nothing. Now let's talk about Japan, because this is where the story gets even bigger. In Japan, konjac is not a supplement. It is not a wellness trend. It is just food. Everyday, ordinary food, just like a burger in America or a taco in Mexico. It comes in a noodle form called shirataki. It comes as a firm, dense block called konjaku. It shows up in traditional stews like oden, in miso soup, in school lunch boxes across Japan. Japanese grandmothers have been cooking with it for generations. And Japan, and despite having one of the most rapidly aging populations on Earth, consistently ranks among the lowest in the world for obesity and type 2 diabetes. Japanese people live longer than almost anyone else. The mechanisms are multiple, but researchers who study Japanese dietary patterns point consistently to high viscous fiber intake, the thick, gel-forming, blood sugar stabilizing kind. The kind konjac provides. The Japanese did not need a pharmaceutical company to synthesize their GLP-1 response. They ate konjac, and their bodies did the rest, naturally, for 2,000 years. Western food culture optimized for speed, shelf life, and tastiness. Slow digesting, high-fiber foods got left behind. Not because the science was wrong, because there was no money in them. So how do you use konjac? The most practical form is shirataki noodles. You can find them in many grocery stores, sometimes labeled as miracle noodles or zero-calorie noodles, in a small pouch in the refrigerated section. A few dollars a bag. On their own, they have almost no taste. That is the feature, not the flaw. They absorb whatever flavor you cook them in. Use them in soups, in stir-fries, as a pasta substitute with your favorite sauce. Most people find the difference from regular pasta much smaller than they expected. One key preparation step: rinse them well under cold water, then dry toast them in a hot pan for 1 to 2 minutes with no oil. This removes the slight odor from storage and dramatically improves the texture. Glucomannan also comes as a supplement, powder or capsule. Take it with a large glass of water, at least 8 ounces, about 30 minutes before your main meals. This gives it time to form that gel before food arrives. Research shows optimal benefits with doses of at least 5 grams per day for 12 weeks or longer, typically split into smaller doses with each meal. And if you are currently taking medication for blood sugar or diabetes, including metformin, please speak with your doctor before adding glucomannan regularly. It genuinely lowers blood sugar. Your doctor needs to know, so your medications can be adjusted safely. Here is what I want you to understand. Ozempic works. For people with advanced type 2 diabetes, GLP-1 drugs can be genuinely life-changing. That is not in dispute. But there is a gap, a massive gap, between people who medically need those drugs and people who are heading toward that diagnosis and do not have to be. People who are insulin resistant, people whose blood sugar is creeping up every year, people who are gaining weight and cannot figure out why. Those people deserve to know that the same mechanisms, slower gastric emptying, appetite suppression, improved insulin sensitivity, better blood sugar control, can be activated by a 2,000-year-old plant root. That has been studied. That is safe and only costs $3. Glucomannan has no patent. No corporation owns it. There is no billion-dollar marketing campaign behind it or commercial during the evening news. There is just the science and 2,000 years of Japanese grandmothers who already knew. That is what this channel exists to tell you. The things that work, that nobody profits from telling you about. The Japanese have a word, ma, the meaningful pause, the space between things. What is not said is sometimes as important as what is. When it comes to your health, the things not said, the foods not mentioned, the traditions quietly abandoned, can cost you decades of quality of life. Konjac is one of those things. Simple, ancient, inexpensive, backed by real science, and sitting quietly on a shelf in your grocery store. $3, while the pharmaceutical industry charges $1,000 a month for a synthetic version of what it naturally provides. You do not need a prescription. You do not need an injection. You need a bag of noodles and the knowledge that what you are holding has been trusted for 2,000 years by one of the healthiest populations on Earth. If this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who needs it, someone who is quietly struggling, who has been told their only option is a pill or an injection. There is more to do. There always has been. And if you want to go deeper into the Japanese methods that have been keeping people healthier, longer, with less, subscribe and like. There is much more to cover. Tell me about topics you are interested in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.